everyone wants to see the shavings, right? I mean, that's half the fun of it, is just making the shavings. Hello everyone. So this is the follow-on video that I promised some of you. It goes along with the pictures I had posted about how I took a Stanley 29 transitional plane and turned it into a shooting plane. So yes, this is was a Stanley number 29 transitional. The overall length of a Stanley 29 is 20 inches. And even though I rotated this frog and cut it out at a 45, it still maintained most of its length. This is 18 1/4 now inches in length. So just taking a quick look here, you can see that the rear tote would have been mounted here, and I had moved it up. I have a piece of the casting that I had cut off that was underneath the tote and maintained that just for stability and to screw the tote, something to screw the tote into. I added a additional hole in the casting to screw into the wood, so it has 2 screws underneath this tote actually. Additionally, you can see I added a sole, a piece of wood for the sole. Happened to be something that I had that was already kind of cut to the dimensions I wanted to use. So it's about 1/4 inch thick. You can see I trimmed it up and cleaned it up to match the dimensions of the finished product here. Let's take a look at the frog underneath the blade here. You see the mouth there is untouched, so I didn't have to do anything there. Now the casting that's underneath the frog is obviously not there, so I used a piece of wood there as a spacer to get that height where I wanted it, pretty close to its original height there. I had a Wood River blade that I decided to use. Most of these are, in my opinion, way too thick for your Stanley type planes. But I wanted to try it and just kind of see how it would fit, and preferred not to use it there because I had to cut the mouth to make it fit. But in this transitional plane, it's actually nice and tight. It did come through the mouth okay, and for a shooting plane, we're taking very small shavings, so I like this nice tight mouth that it produced. I'll mention here one of the issues with using a thick plane like this on a old Stanley plane is this yoke or depth adjustment yoke here only protrudes so far, and when you add this thickness of this plane blade, the yoke doesn't really go into the chip breaker very well. So I banged a piece of copper and made a little U-shaped shim. Hopefully that comes out okay there. And that just drops right in that hole there. And what this does is it gives it a little more contact area for that yoke, and also because of the depth of the blade, to get the blade down far enough, you really have to back off that thumb adjustment screw. And now, in fact, to the point where it's so far that it's almost not even protruding into the chip breaker anymore. So having that little shim on there really helps. And I actually done that to some of my metal Stanley, like Stanley Bailey planes as well. It kind of actually takes out some of the slop in that depth adjustment. I'll take a moment, take a look at the other side here, just so you can see it. Some of the original mounting holes for the tote and handle. I filled those in. And just for demonstration purposes of how I did this, I got a little mock-up here that I made for you. So we can pretend like this is the plane you're starting out with if you decide to do this. And Some of you may, some of you may not. Some of you may think I totally disrespected this plane by doing this, and I understand that. Normally I do not do this kind of thing to a good plane, and just so happened this plane had a crack in the casting, so that's why I kind of volunteered it for this experiment, if you will. So if you were to do this, how I did it is, we have the plane here, here's the mouth, we got the frog back here, up here would be the knob, back here would be the tote. And I wanted to turn this frog at a 45, like such. So I used my bandsaw and I opened it up, cut it out, and I left the 45 spaced wide enough apart that I cut so that the mouth wasn't affected, the opening on for the blade wasn't affected by the cut. There's plenty of room, enough meat on the back where the frog screws into, and then just simply turn it. So this was the side, and now this will become the sole. So at this point you're like, well, all right, how do I piece this back together? And it's pretty simple. You just take your front and back of the toe and heel and just simply flip them and put them back together. And by doing that, it makes real nice. It keeps everything pretty square, assuming your initial cut was done pretty well. So at this point, I just kind of glued it up. I made a jig to keep everything nice and tight, and using my clamps and just put a bunch of glue on there, the joints, and just glued it up and tightened it up. It works so far pretty well. Then, as I said before, I added a piece of wood on the bottom of here where the sole will be to make it just a nice smooth surface with even grain, so you're not going across different types of grain. As you can see, and because I'm using this in a shooting board, there's a certain amount of height that I have to come up to. This blade needs to drop just below the edge of the shooting board, so this happened to work out pretty well. So, with that being said, I'll get to the fun part and actually do a little demo for you. So, how effective a shooting plane is probably split 50-50 between the plane and the board you make or buy, or however you do it. So I made this one, and typically I do small miter work for picture frames or framing doors on a cabinet or something like that. So that's how this is made here, or what it's made for. And I'm going to adjust the depth of this blade here to where I think it should be, since I've taken it out and messed with it. Take the backlash out of it. Now this is kind of a narrow plane this way, for a shooting plane. But I think it works pretty well. I have a track that it rides in, and it has this fence back here, and it keeps everything pretty nice and tight. It's got a little room for wiggle there, but not much. It does pretty well, especially for the smaller stuff that I work on. So this here is a piece of cherry. I really like cherry and walnut. That's what I make most of my things with. So I simply, I cut the miter with the saw. I got a handsaw and a little miter box, and it gets it pretty close. And really what the shooting plane for me is for is just to clean up that edge. That's a little bit tight, so we'll back it off just a hair. There we go. And it does really well with this piece of cherry. I thought I can kind of go slide and bring the blade right up to it and push, and it'll go through it. I really like working with cherry. This is a piece of oak here, so you can see how it works with some other pieces of wood. And you may see the chips popping out of the back out there. I'll show you on the other side here in a minute. So yeah, for what I use it for, it does pretty well. 90s I'm usually not too concerned with, 90-degree angle, but it cleans that up real nice also. This is a bigger piece of walnut. I'd probably never do something like this in here, but I wanted to just see how it would work. And it actually goes through it. It pushes through. I don't think it would work very well at a 90 with this much wood. Not this plane anyways, but it does okay with the smaller stuff. So I'll swing you around the other side here. Yeah, so here we are back on the other side there. Because everyone wants to see the shavings, right? I mean, that's half the fun of it, is just making the shavings. Yeah, so there we go. Doing its job. Got a pretty clean cut on there on that end grain. So I'm pretty happy. It does what all needed to do, and it was kind of fun making it. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. You could do some fancy stuff, and when you're joining the pieces of wood back together, throw some dovetails in there or something. Yeah, I cleaned it up a little bit. I kind of added some, kind of shaped it like you would a molding plane. Gave it a little bit of style. Just kind of had some fun with it. So anyways, I hope this explains things to you guys. If you watched this much of it and made it this far, then thank you and enjoy. Take care.